Welcome back to the TwoPointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. We're back here today to talk finally some NBA. I know I've kind of led you astray in telling you I'm an NBA podcast sometimes, and the last couple weeks has been all college basketball. It's just been really exciting. The NBA is starting to develop its season here, January, February. That's what we're here to talk about. Before we get to the guest, don't worry. The TwoPointers code is still active and live for Dubby Energy. Don't forget to check that out. Links in the description below. 10% off your order at dubbyenergy.com. First, let's talk really quick, introduce Chris. Chris is from the Ballgame Podcast, and we want to talk today about the Nets and the Mavs. Funny story how this came about. I was teetering between about 9 topics, and I was really frustrated because I don't want to talk to myself for an hour and a half about 9 topics. I really enjoy talking to other people and creating basketball discourse. And then I went, you know what? I talked to Chris a little bit about some stuff. I said, let's see if he's free for a pod this week. And I said, you know what? I'm struggling. Pick the 2 things we're going to talk about. And he said, well, the Nets are on a 12-game win streak. I said, fair point. He said the Mavs are on a whatever they were at the time. They're on 7 now. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Mavs are on a win streak, and obviously Luke is playing at an MVP caliber level. I said, sounds great. I'll throw something in at the end. So we are here. We're going to talk about the Nets win streaks, the Mavericks win streaks, and also, like I said, I have a surprise for the listener and for Chris at the end to talk about. So first, welcome. Introduce yourself, what you do, what you talk about with your show, etc., and let my listeners know where they can find you.
Thanks for having me. First off, this is my first time being a guest on someone else's podcast, so I'm a little bit nervous right now, but I'm very excited. Like you said, I'm a member of the Ballgame Podcast. We started up about 3 months ago or so, something like that. We're fairly new still. Mainly basketball, but, we like every other sport. So we talk about baseball, we talk about football as much as we can, but for the most part, basketball. And it's just the 5 of us, friends, pretty much just having the conversations we would have in the PlayStation party in front of a camera with a microphone. And since I got into that, I've personally been more active on Twitter, and I started my own YouTube channel, Chris's Hoops Corner. I have a video dropping actually as we speak. I reacted to NBA hot takes, so go give that a look. That's really it. Just chilling.
First of all, for my listeners here, no reason to be nervous because at the end of the day, I always tell people this who I talk to, whether it's first time or whether it's the 60th time on this show. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and at the end of the day, if I'm talking basketball, like I don't do it for a living yet. Hopefully, that's the goal, right? But I don't do it for a living yet, so I have no reason to be nervous, right? That's what I look at it as. It's like, I'm just talking with a friend, hopefully, and chatting it up about some basketball. It doesn't hurt anything, right? So really intrigued to see I like the growth in 3 months. I've definitely enjoyed the show. I told you I have been watching as best as I can. I think YouTube is a really important piece of it. That's why I'm glad that you guys out the gate was like, hey, we're going to post this stuff visually. I think people need to see that, especially the format you guys do. You do it in like an open room together, almost table style, and I really like seeing the diversity there versus – I'm kind of at the whim of by myself here, so I'm obviously on a Zoom call with you, so not exactly advantageous sometimes. But I enjoy what you guys do. Everything will be linked below for your personal stuff as well as all of the total podcast feed as well will be down there. So with the Nets, let's just dive right into it with the basketball. So with the Nets, obviously you brought this up. So they're obviously on the longer win streak as of yesterday. Unfortunately, they lost to the Bulls last night. But
shout out my Bulls.
Shout out to the Bulls because they are like 9-1 against like the top 3 teams in the East this year, which just whatever. That aside, right? And shout out to the Bulls. I did not realize you were a Bulls fan. I think I missed that at some point. So I have some thoughts because obviously we're getting close to the deadline, and there's things that there's people teetering on different sides of that opinion with the Bulls, and I'd like to give it 30 more days because I'm not necessarily out yet. We'll talk about them another time, but
yeah, for sure.
Nets are on a 12-game win streak, and since you're new here, I always like to kickstart a conversation with a question because I think it can just be an open dialogue. I think that's what this needs to be because what I try to do is I go, hey, what do I think about a team and why? And then obviously you're here for a reason. I want to discuss it with you. So without saying anything else, with the Mavs, I have something I want to lead with. But what do you think is the biggest reason for this team's turnaround would be the question I start with.
I think the obvious answer is Jacque Vaughn, considering they started off super slow. I'm pretty sure it was 2-5 when Steve Nash was there in the beginning of the season.
Exactly what I have written down as well.
Yeah, and they've been on an absolute tear ever since Jacque Vaughn took over. I'm pretty sure top 5 offense, top 5 defense. And honestly, Kevin Durant's probably right up there. You could go either way with who's been more important, Jacque Vaughn or Kevin Durant, because in my opinion, and I've said this multiple times, Kevin Durant's having the best season of his 15-year career, which is crazy to say, but he's been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I was out for a little bit on the best season of his career, but then literally the last 5 to 10 games have just completely proved that. Like, it was statistically pretty close to the, whatever that last year was of OKC that he didn't win the MVP, I think is the year I'm thinking about. Or maybe even one of the, those random Warriors years where he was like technically the guy, even though it was Steph's team. It's like, I'm with you. I think Jacque Vaughn, like, I've always been a fan of Jacque Vaughn. I don't have enough to sit here and be like, this is all the reasons and receipts I like Jacque Vaughn. I would accredit it to the fact that, regardless if we're going to get 5 months of Kyrie Irving, we can talk about that in a few minutes, but whether we're getting 5 normal months with Kyrie, this is something that Kevin Durant hasn't done in a long time, and I think the Achilles injury is so important to think about because he is essentially right now the exception to an Achilles rule about the sustainability and about how that injury can derail people's careers, honestly, for the majority of basketball history. So do you think this is sustainable? Whether it's Kevin Durant's play or
I
the win streak?
absolutely do think it's sustainable. So preseason, the Nets were actually my pick to come out of the East. Ironically enough, preseason, both the teams we're going to talk about were my picks to play each other in the finals, actually. I had the Nets and the Mavericks playing each other in the finals. But yeah, I think this is absolutely sustainable. I think Kevin Durant has proven for 15 years now that this is who he is. Like, and the biggest thing for Kevin Durant, in my opinion, has what makes this his greatest season of his career has been the defensive end. I think this is arguably his greatest defensive season he's had. He's been incredible as a shot blocker, and a lot of the questions in the offseason about the Nets were on that side of the ball, and he's kind of taken the initiative and been a plus on that end, and obviously the emergence of Nick Claxton, but he's been arguably their best defender, and I think that goes to show Kevin Durant's leadership. So I think it's absolutely sustainable. I don't think Kevin Durant will go out there and say it, but I think he really has something to prove, considering everyone says all that stuff about the rings with Golden State. So I think he's really trying to prove a statement this season, and it's showing in the win column right now for them.
Yeah, there's some stuff that kind of jumps off the page that I wanted to kind of go through with him and them as a team, but he's shooting 63% from 2, which is nothing like we should be shocked by. That's Kevin Durant type stuff in an MVP type season. But 12% of his shots only are coming at the rim. So he's just that's the only hesitation I would have with the efficiency is just, obviously he's not a get to the rim guy. That's not like his bread and butter, but can he do it? 100%. We know that. He's a Hall of Famer, and I think he just passed someone, I don't remember who it was now, for 14th all-time in scoring, which just think about that number out loud. There are only 13 people in NBA history with more points than Kevin Durant right now. Like, I guess we just have to continue to realize every single year, if he's healthy, he's playing, he's going to continue his stance as a top, whatever, small forward all time and all that stuff. That's a different debate. But we're seeing that level of yes, I think this can be sustainable. I think and I figured you were going to be on one end or the other. You were going to think it was sustainable or not. But then I like you threw that nugget in. Hey, this is what I thought preseason. Obviously you had to take consideration Steve Nash was probably going to be fired. It was an assumption at that point.
Right.
I mean, at that point, it was either your superstar's pissed off for 6.5 months or Steve Nash has gone within 7 games, 8 games, 10 games, whatever, and he was fired after 7 games. So, sustainably enough, sure. The MVP thing is so tough because I'm fighting tooth and nail. I'm trying not to do this. I'm trying not to I like the MVP. I love talking about it at any point in the season. I think it's fun to 10 games in to be like, oh, who's the MVP right now? It's I think it's fun. I think it's all just normal basketball talk. But I'm trying to be really careful because I think I want a full sample size from all of these guys, and I have some thoughts and ideas for some midseason stuff. So I think it's right now, if I had to give you, he would probably be in the top 3, but I think it's just because he's the reason that win streak is so sustainable. Like, that win streak is what really opened my eyes. Not that they couldn't do it. I have the teams that they played in front of me. The whole argument for the first 6-7 games was they were playing cupcakes. And then they went on a streak where, if you didn't realize, some of the teams, and for the listeners especially, they went a win against Golden State towards the end of the streak, win versus, this was both at home, Golden State, Milwaukee, and then they went to Cleveland, and then at Atlanta, they won back by 1. That was a close game, and then they beat Charlotte. That was the last 5 of the win streak before, and then San Antonio before they lost to Chicago last night. So, you started off with teams like Charlotte, Atlanta, Indiana, Washington, Toronto, Detroit. So, like, maybe Indiana, Atlanta are the two teams I'd even be like, okay, cool, fine. Like, they started a win streak off, fine. But their last loss before the win streak was against Boston, and it was a blowout. So, I just want to see them do this in – I'm not going to say February because you know how the All-Star break is, right? Guys will do the All-Star break or whatever, and then they'll see their seating position, and they'll be like, okay, fine, whatever. And then they'll kind of almost just lazily walk through March. It's kind of frustrating. So I want to see this team do this consistently against a little bit better competition, which they do have a stretch of tough teams coming up right before the All-Star break. So I'm not worried. I think it's all valid in that point.
That's definitely a great point. They definitely had an easier end of their schedule, but I think that's what a team like this needed to kind of get going. And I mean,
bingo.
When you talk about a win streak and if it's sustainable, I always make sure I mention this when I talk about it. Obviously, if I'm saying it's sustainable, I don't mean they're never going to lose again. Obviously, like it's an 82-game season. No one's going 82-0.
Obviously, yeah, you're good.
I think this is exactly what this team needed to gain some momentum. I mean, you got two guys, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, playing at arguably all-star starter level, all-NBA level. You have Nick Claxton playing at an all-defensive level, and then you have all the guys around them who are contributing in their own way. So I think it showed this team their recipe for what they need to do to win games. So now it's just about, like you said, taking that recipe and applying it when you're playing against these upper teams, the Bostons, the Milwaukees, the Denvers, all those guys.
Yeah, so I wanted to – you kind of mentioned it earlier about the efficient – just like how good their offense and defense has been. I have questions about the defense, but again, it boils down to, like, let's see what they do against a couple of top-tier playoff teams, and if they have a defensive good showing, then I'm going to be more convinced. I just hesitate on the personnel there a little bit more than anything. It's not a big hesitation, but it is a hesitation. But their offense, this is a stat that blew my mind that I figured they were in this upper echelon, but I didn't realize where they were efficiently. In terms of NBA University has a statistic, or it's technically B-Ball Index, but I got this through NBA University. The most efficient half-court offenses in the league, and obviously they're not a run-gun team. Like, they're going to get the ball into their spots, run the right plays, and you're seeing that with Jack Vaughn. We've made that a point already. Top five tied Portland and Philly at 1.011, and then you have Sacramento. No surprise there. They deserve to be up there. They've been an unbelievable offense. Tough loss last night against Atlanta at home. I was up late anyway, so I was like, why not watch the Kings play? Because that's the best time to watch them when they're the only team on, and you don't have to flip. But Sacramento, 1.042. Boston, 1.045. All usual suspects. All suspects we probably assume this season should be there, right?
Right.
And then the whole reason I even wrote this down was Dallas is second with 1.051, who we're going to talk about in just a minute, which I thought was hilariously appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brooklyn's first with another entire tenth of a point ahead with 1.064. So at least statistically, obviously that takes into a lot of things. It takes in effective field goal percentage, a lot of these detailed stats that don't necessarily matter this early in the season yet. But it is still nice to see that these two teams we're talking about on these streaks are the two most efficient half-court offenses in the league.
Right, and I mean, that's a testament to, like you said, the personnel. You have Kyrie and KD who are going to slow the game down. And I saw a stat, shout out NBA University, because they do a lot of the research for guys like us, so we don't have to stare at the stats all day.
They got a shout out from Ian Eagle the other night, by the way. Did you see that?
I saw that. That was
dope.
huge for them.
Super dope.
It was awesome. I think they posted something the other day where it was, I want to say they were top 1 in both, but I don't want to be wrong, so I'm just going to say top 5. But it was isolation scoring and defense against isolation. And, all the replies were flooding saying the same thing. That's how you win playoff games. The game slows down in the playoffs, so you have to be able to score in a half-court setting in the playoffs, and you have to be able to defend people in a half-court setting in the playoffs. And throughout this win streak, they're proving they could do both those things. So
it's a great point. No, the playoff implications are really, really important. That's actually what I wanted to end with the Nets, was understanding. Ultimately, you kind of alluded to it, where at least preseason, which, again, with no context preseason other than is their head coach going to be fired in the first 10, 15 games, I would say that was a pretty bold prediction. I tried to find my doc fast enough. unless I'm just like looking past it, I probably moved it or something. But I think I had them like in that 7-9 range or 6-9 range, just because of the hesitation. There was things and uncertainty, and I wasn't comfortable being the person to be like, this is where I had them. I do think they were going to make the playoffs, and I think they can beat anybody, assuming they get to this point where they are now, which is where they are. So if any kind of power ranking comes up of any kind for me at some point, they're obviously going to reflect that. So I guess my question would be, now you have no reason to walk this back, but do you still think they can make the finals and win, then beat anybody
100%.
in the East? In the East,
yeah, I mean, I made a video on my channel last week. I think they're the best team in the NBA, honestly, right now. Like we said, KD and Kyrie, those are the guys. And one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing for this team over the tenure of Kyrie and KD being there, has just been lineup consistency. I saw maybe like 2 days ago was the first time since they've both been there that the Nets have had a empty injury report, which is huge for them. But it's the other guys, man. I mean, Seth Curry, Joe Harris, you're getting elite shooting from those guys, but then you got a guy like Yuta Watanabe who emerged out of nowhere and is arguably the best three-point shooter in the NBA this season. He's right up there in terms of percentage. Obviously, it's not super high volume, but still, he's hitting over 50% of his threes. You got Nick Claxton, who's been incredible this season. I can't stress that enough. Nick Claxton honestly has a case for being Defensive Player of the Year and Most Improved Player. He's not going to get the respect in those awards because there's obviously some better candidates. But if you talk about a guy who's improved, he's right up there with everyone. He's been an anchor on the defensive end for them. And then the biggest thing for the Nets, and it started their win streak. I think last night was only the second game they lost since he played, but they got TJ Warren on a minimum deal. And that's just another guy who's going to come in, play 15, 20 minutes and just get buckets for you. So I think they're a very complete team, and I think they could beat you in different ways. Obviously, we said they're one of the best half-court teams in the NBA, rightfully so because of the personnel. But having a guy like Ben Simmons, who I think is having a super underrated season because of the slow start the Nets got off to and he got off to, but you have a guy like Ben Simmons who his bread and butter is getting a rebound, pushing the pace, and finding open three-point shooters, and honestly passing these three-point shooters open, like with his passing is making them open. So I think they could beat you in different ways. I think they have a lot of different personnel to throw different lineups out there. I just think they're honestly the most complete team in the NBA. Obviously, Boston is right up there with them, but I personally lean the Nets currently.
So a couple of things. I like I basically agree with everything you said, and I want to unpack a couple of things there. So I think the Ben Simmons point's intriguing because I thought about this yesterday as we were trying to go through the topics and try to get to where we ultimately ended up with the Nets. I think his impact, that obviously when he was the news guy, he was the hot story, like it was frustrating because that was all you heard was the negative stuff, right? But like, I'll be like, there are receipts. Like I've been doing this for 2 years now as of last month. There are receipts. I was the last guy to sell the Ben Simmons stock, okay? I held on for way too long. Should have sold it 6 months before. I regret giving up on the guy, basically. But long story short, I think he's like 90% back to where he was. I really do. Now, granted, he was an all-NBA defender at that time, whatever, which I think he is now. I think he's starting to get the touch at the rim, things like that. But from everything I've seen, I think he is a big, big, big difference maker, and I don't think it's getting appreciated enough. So I'm glad you said that. Obviously, he's one of the few guys that are playmakers of that level that can pass guys open. Like, that's just, it is what it is. When you have a guy like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, just get them the ball and get out of the way. Like, they're going to miss eventually, right? And I actually wanted to tie that to the miss eventually point because I didn't even, like, I had some stuff in front of me, but, like, some of these numbers, like, they're going to come down, but where they level themselves out, we're about the 30-40 game mark where I think, close to 40, whatever, right? But we're going to start seeing some of these teams that are hot. Like, I expected the Kings fall off, and they're second in points per game right now. But the Nets are, like, first in almost, or top 5 in almost every standard offensive category. So, and they're built to do that. And lastly, I will just say, shout out to TJ Warren. That's the only thing NC State on my desk I could find. I'm a Raleigh guy, so thank you for that.
That's actually pretty crazy.
Deserves every bit of credit.
I'm almost I don't want to say die hard because I'm not from there, but I'm a really big UNC fan.
Yeah.
So
I see the
you guys got
it's right there behind you.
You guys got a huge win last night, though. Shout out to you guys.
I was there. It was unbelievable. I literally went because A, it was free. and B, yeah, well, that was hard to turn down, right? And then I was like, you know what? There's some killer talent out there NBA draft wise, and I'm starting to do the draft a lot earlier this year. Official big board's out January 1st already, so check it out on TwoPointersPodcast.com. Free plug. I don't normally do that. That was weird. But and then I also wrote an entire article about the 8 guys or 7 guys that I saw on both sides that impressed me or didn't, and just kind of, I mean, the fact that I came up with 7, and I probably could have kept going. That's the crazy thing. Like, I mean, Proctor, Whitehead, I'm blanking now. Filipowski, obviously, Derek Lively. Those were the 4 I covered for Duke, and then I hit on all the guys that had great games for State because obviously I think they deserve some of the credit. They're not going to get drafted, but it is what it is. So great, yeah. TJ Warren is the whole point there. Shout out to TJ Warren.
For sure.
I think he's been a huge reason for their offensive success, especially off the bench.
For sure.
All right. I think it's time to talk about Luka, and I want to address something up front with Luka because I think this conversation is really important. First of all, I've been, like I said, I've been doing this 2 years. I've really enjoyed it, and I think for the most part, the support has been positive. But doing the Yesterday in the NBA series, you're going to reach random people at random times because of the way the algorithms work. If for some reason the guy on YouTube is listening right now from YouTube Shorts, who basically tried to race bait me, you should delete your YouTube account. You should just get off the internet. The way I worded the Donovan Mitchell 71-point game thing, it's 60 seconds. I have like 4.5 seconds a team when they all play to talk about them. Like, I couldn't include like an adjective that I wanted to about Donovan Mitchell's game. Like, it was insane. Let's be transparent. I have not addressed it publicly on a show, Chris, for what it's worth. I haven't addressed really the offensive boom in general. This is kind of the first time I've had a chance to do it. So I just want to get that out of the way. Donovan Mitchell deserves every bit of credit as Luka Doncic does. People can clip that. They can aggregate it. I don't care. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, I want to get to the Mavericks. I'm going to read you a couple of things stats-wise, and then that's the question I want to leave with the Mavs because I am intrigued by them. I'd like that you like the Nets, obviously, and I could tell that there was a you believe in it factor. I'll just be real with you. I'm on the opposite end with the Mavs, so I want to just start with that. I want to be very transparent that this will be a fun conversation. So Luka, obviously, insane stats for those who for some reason aren't keeping up, 34.5 points per game. He leads the league in that category. I wanted to get the context of where these are. 8.9 assists. He's 4th in the league in that. I think assist totals or per games are down historically because normally there's a handful of guys above 9 and then everybody else, if there's 10 plus, are in the top 5. But not discrediting it in any way. 8.9 assists per game is 4th. He's 21st in rebounds, 8.8 points per or rebounds per game, which is just bonkers. 25, top 25 in the league. 50, 36, 74 splits, and 32 PER, which is really, really good for a guy of his usage. The point that I wanted to make was just kind of understanding what he's done and how it's part of, obviously, we've talked about an offensive boom in the league. He is averaging 3.6 turnovers per game as their lead ball handler, which is the lowest of his career based on the fact that he has a 38.4% usage percentage. And that's what we're going to talk about for a second, is the usage percentage. He also, by the way, fun fact, this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but it is important. He leads the league in assist percentage. And assist percentage is intriguing because when people hear it, I don't think they understand fully what it means. It's percentage of teammate field goals that were assisted when he's on the floor actively. So, yeah, sure, that probably on the surface sounds about right, but he is almost assisting 50% of his team's total volume shots. So the question I have for you, is this level of play sustainable? It's very similar to the Nets, but how do you feel about the team around him based on the fact we know he can do this stuff at a high usage rate?
All right, so I've gotten into this a few times already because one of the co-hosts on my podcast is strongly against the Mavericks. In terms of sustainability, like I said, they're obviously going to lose a game at some point. I don't think they're the best team in the West. I don't think they're a top 3 team in the Western Conference. Currently, they sit at 4, and I think that's probably where they finish, somewhere around there, 4, 5, 6 range. They're a playoff team for sure. They're not going to be in the play-in, I don't think. But will they get into that top 3? Probably not. So do I think this type of play is sustainable? I really do believe so. So I'll get into it. When the Mavs struggled in the beginning of the season, I said there were 3 things that were wrong with the Mavericks. The first and obvious one was no one on the team can make a shot. They started off so terribly shooting the 3 ball, and that's changed. Tim Hardaway Jr., I went on probably like a 15-minute rampage about the Dallas Mavericks how everyone outside of Luka Doncic couldn't do anything. And I really went in on Tim Hardaway Jr. And surprisingly enough, I'm sure you probably experienced this. Anytime you talk about a specific player, whether negative or positive, they come out right away and do the complete opposite, and it makes your take look stupid. The second thing was at that time, this was like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, early on in the season, the Luka Doncic, Spencer Dinwiddie minutes were net negative, and those I don't have it right in front of me. I couldn't tell you if it has been a positive as of right now, but just from the eye test and just from watching,
It's
they've
not good
been
still,
better.
is my opinion. They've been better, but it's still
Right, yeah,
I don't know either.
100%, 100%. They've been better, and then the last thing was Christian Wood getting more burn, and I think that's been the biggest thing. I think Christian Wood's been a revelation for this team. He's obviously Luka's insane play is the biggest reason he's been incredible, especially since Christmas. But over this win streak, Christian Wood has been incredible, and not just on the offensive side of the ball. It's been defensively for me personally. We all knew Christian Wood could put the ball in the basket, but can Christian Wood be a plus defender? And that's what he's showing over this win streak. And also, they're doing this without Maxi Kleber, who probably is done for the season. I'm pretty sure he has a torn hamstring, so sucks Maxi Kleber, prayers to him. But they're also doing it without Dorian Finney-Smith and also without Josh Green, who are huge rotational pieces for this team. So I think getting those guys back whenever they do come back is only going to help this team. And in terms of the Luka Doncic usage thing, because that's what turns everyone off from the Mavericks, the heliocentrism, it's never won a title before.
Other than maybe 2011 for them, but
right,
that would be the only example in the last 30 I can give you right now, which is
but it was different. It wasn't like Dirk was bringing the ball
way worse of a league, I will say.
Right,
the league was way
sure.
worse in 2011 than it is now. I think that's not debate, but
I just really think Luka Doncic is that good that he's the exception. He's LeBron-esque, where he could take a team of just shooters by himself like LeBron did in 2018. Granted, it was a much weaker Eastern Conference than what Luka's going against in the Western Conference right now. But I think Luka is that good where he could just carry a team of three-point shooters, and if they're making shots, the sky's the limit. So that's where I stand.
So I like the point about there's some stuff there. Like I think the West may be a little worse than we think. I think it's also attributing, my opinion wise, to injuries, where I'm maybe thinking of a team right now as not contributing and like 2 weeks ago we thought the Jazz were going to be a top 6 seed. Like that was just a normal thing that NBA everybody thought, right? And obviously now they're 10th at 19 and 21. The Mavs are, like you mentioned, the West thing. I'm kind of like on the fence there because they're 16 and 6. They have the third best record against the conference, so they're beating the bad teams. Like they're beating the Rockets every time they play them, the Spurs, the Thunder. Like they're pretty much winning all those games. So I want to play a little game. Before we do that, let me be clear about the usage percentage thing. I am just not a fan of it because I'm an NBA historian first than anything, and I think it does dictate. Obviously, eras are different. It's a super important conversation for all-time player rankings and team rankings and yada yada yada, all the stuff that we do in the offseason when we're bored. It's also really important to understand the context of how the game's grown and understanding that how his usage percentage is being portrayed is obviously not positive. You address that. Like people just don't like it because he's got the ball all the time, whatever. I mean, I think at one point 3 weeks ago, like just before Christmas, he ended up having the ball like 26% of his team's total time on the floor. Okay, fine. Like if they're winning games, we're seeing that. Like that's okay. But it comes down to me where, okay, he's going to probably, and I didn't want to be this guy before the season that was like, this is why his usage is going to be so high because his team sucks. That's exactly what we're seeing. I think other than the Christian Wood emergence as a pick and roll player, that has been the most important thing to me. Someone recently put out a top 10 of most efficient pick and rolls in the NBA, and Christian Wood and Luka Doncic were like second or third, and then there was another pick and roll combination for the Mavs on there too. So like they're a pick and roll offense team that they're really fun to watch in that regard. I'm not a fan of Spencer Dinwiddie personally, but I do think he's been positive for this team for the sake of his role he's able to play because of the Luka's usage percentage. But regardless, I just wasn't a fan coming into the season of the team, and I still am not, and that's why I want to play this game of understanding right now who would we rather take in a playoff series. So obviously Houston's a no, San Antonio's a no. I'm just getting these out of the way for you because these teams aren't making the playoffs. OKC, sorry. LA, the Lakers are 12th currently. I guess I'll start there. Like, would you rather have right now in the playoffs Mavs or Lakers? Okay, assuming fully healthy everybody, right? We're saying right now.
Yeah.
It's hard because I want to tell you right now, and right now would tell me that LeBron and AD are both hurt because LeBron didn't play last night against the Heat. So I guess we're going to have to say fully healthy for the fun of it. But Timberwolves.
The Mavs.
Okay. This is where it starts to get weird. The Jazz. Who beat them twice this year.
I'm still taking the Mavs.
All right, me too.
We're going to keep going, but I just want to get it out there. I think you give Luka Doncic a 7-game series to figure your defense out and figure out how you're going to guard him. I think he could beat anyone. There's a few teams that I am going to say are bad matchups for them, so we'll get to them, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Probably next. Golden State's 9 right now without Curry. They're 5-1 at home.
I have to take Golden State. I feel disrespectful if I don't, especially the way Klay Thompson's been playing over the last 5 games. Shout out to him.
I mean, taking into consideration anything at all, the fact they won the title last year, so it's kind of hard not to take them in this analogy. But yes, I think fully healthy, they can beat almost anybody. Although I think there's some parts about Dallas's offense that would make me think they would be able to keep pace with Golden State, but that's maybe we don't have enough context.
I think they'll keep it competitive. I think they lose 4-1 in the conference finals last year, right? They only took a game from them. Yeah. I think having Christian Wood gives it kind of contributes to the Warriors weaknesses.
It forces them to play a certain way.
Right. So Phoenix, I'm taking the Mavs.
That's where we disagree. If Booker's there, and I'm a Devin Booker truther, I'll just be real with you. I have been the guy that defended him consistently over the last 7 years of his career, but I think Phoenix is well built enough defensively, even though we did see that. I understand that they lost in Game 7. Like, I can't get the image out of my head, but even with the Jay Crowder thing, I don't know what they're getting for him. There's uncertainty there. They could be a Jakob Poeltl team. Like, there's a lot of things I'm just obviously projecting at that point. It's hard to do, but I just think defensively the Phoenix is too good right now, and I think they're playing poorly without Devin Booker. That's what happens when your best offensive player disappears for a month. It sucks. Like, and as a fantasy owner of him, it sucks even more. So Phoenix, I would carefully disagree, but I think I'm more open to the thought of Dallas beating them in the series. Even though they did, I get it.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because if you're a team and you have Mikal Bridges, that's one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the entire NBA who you could throw on Luka Doncic. Like, Mikal Bridges is that good defensively, so I definitely see the point there. My thing with the Suns is just the offensive consistency from the 3 guys who aren't Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Ayton, and Bridges. It just, especially this season, and especially with Chris Paul, it just hasn't been there. So I slightly lean the Mavs. And I also think the Mavs are, as a team, an underrated defensive team.
Yeah, this is the next team here is the 2 things. Is the come down to earth team that I was very clear about preseason, and also I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. Kind of a testament at how the West right now, because of injuries, is not that good. But Portland is the 7th seed at 19-18. Would you take Portland or Dallas?
I think Dallas sweeps them, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Dame might have something to say about that, but other than that, I'm with you.
Yeah, maybe a 5-game series just because of Dame. But
Jeremy Grant has 36. Dame has whatever Dame's going to have. Like, yeah, okay, sure, right? But Portland was I picked them to finish 11th or 12th, and people weren't happy about that based on the start of the season especially, and I had to eat that. But they're coming back down to earth now at almost a 500 record. The Clippers, this is where it starts to get teams that are relatively over positive records.
The Clippers are the team. If we're gonna go off full health, and that's assuming Kawhi Leonard.
History, if you want.
right. If we're assuming Kawhi Leonard is fully healthy, playing at a top 7 player in the league, I slightly lean the Clippers.
I'm with you because
ever so slightly
a couple times.
Yeah, it's the question really is Kawhi going to be fully healthy? We don't know, but if we're gonna in a vacuum full health for both rosters, I slightly lean the Clippers, but that would be a hell of a series, man.
Yeah, and they're on a 3-game slide right now, but that's with Kawhi and PG have played the last 8 games together, which is just mind blowing. I'm still out on them right now only because it's not a Clippers conversation, but people were like, oh, this is like they were like the pretty, makeup team, like, look at this Clippers team, and everyone was like, oh my god, like, that was what they were. And I was like, guys, We don't know what we're getting from X, Y, and Z here. I'm not going to beat that horse. But then I'm like, but that def was a 9 seed or 8 seed last time. That def, their depth of this team is a lot better. I get it. But this West, they're just not. I don't think they're positioned well outside of those two players. I mean, I think the guard.
I
is
agree.
confusing.
I think they're missing a few things. Everyone was super high on the John Wall thing, and he's just
And by the
not.
way, his start was great.
Yeah,
But it's not sustaining, which is
right,
why if John Wall's not sustaining his play, you're getting Reggie Jackson.
right. And
You're getting Reggie Jackson.
John Wall is not good enough of a shooter, and Reggie Jackson isn't as good enough as a playmaker for what this team needs. I think this team needs just a steady playmaker, low assist to turnover ratio, and or high assist to turnover ratio. My apologies. And
That
who's
stat gets backwards all the time for me.
yeah,
too,
and a guy who's capable of consistently making a 3-point shot at the point guard position. And then the big man thing's kind of a question mark too. Zubac has been really good this season, but
when he's off the floor, it's bad.
right, and we've seen many times Zubac will get played off the floor. So yeah, I agree with that. I just think in terms of bodies to throw at Luka Doncic, the Clippers probably have the most in the Western Conference. And having obviously Kawhi hasn't been himself, but like we said, assuming full health, Kawhi and PG are the two guys who you want guarding Luka Doncic, arguably in the entire NBA. So slightly lean the Clippers.
I would too, and I think they're a team to watch out for, even though the buyout/trade deadline market, they have the pieces to make a trade deadline move, other than they don't have picks. Obviously, OKC owns their picks for the next 4 years, but it's more about, like you mentioned, that playmaker. I just don't know who they go get, and that's maybe a conversation for another day, or maybe in just a minute. Spoiler. But Sacramento is at 5, sustaining pretty much every bit of this insane, and I should probably, just for the sake of the YouTube audience, if you're listening to this on anything other than YouTube, this is your plug to come watch on YouTube. But wrong color. I hit the wrong button.
The beam.
Yeah, we're lighting the beam. We're talking about the Kings. So 20-17. Would you right now, and I know this is wild, the Kings have not been in a playoff series since we were probably here. I don't know how you are. So I think I was 7 the last time the Kings were in a playoff
When was the
series.
last time they were in the playoffs?
2005.
So yeah, I was 4 years old.
Okay, perfect. So since we were toddlers, was the last time this Kings team we could even put them in a playoff series in an example. Would you rather have the Mavericks or the Kings?
Taking the Mavericks.
Yeah,
I think the Mavericks make quick work of the Kings if they play them.
I think it'd be a good series. I think I'd. Not that I'm going to sit here and that was my pretty pick, but they are that was the team. I'm riding every bit of the wave. I think they're awesome, but I think the way they're constructed and the way they play defense, inconsistently, I know, but the way they play defense when they're on, when Mike Brown's forcing them to be in spots and all the stuff that he does for them as a coach, I think they can win. Maybe I think it would be a 6-game series, but I still think the Mavericks.
Who on that team would get the primary Luka assignment?
I think I would be more worried about who would get every other assignment and stop all the other potential Christian Wood stuff. I think Sabonis is a better defender.
Sabonis has been incredible on defense this year.
And I think that would negate Christian Wood there a little bit. I think there's plenty of guys they can throw at Spencer Dinwiddie, and then at that point the Kings have better depth, so I'd be a little bit more.
Right.
I'd be understanding what can Herter do if he's fully healthy, right? Malik Monk, if he's playing like this, then you're getting a guy off the bench that can score 20 in any game for you. And also just I said all that, and then who did I not mention? the guy that's number one in every single clutch. Literally, they might as well right this moment. This is my not bold prediction. I can clip this and I will repost this one when it happens. De'Aaron Fox will win the first Jerry West Clutch Award. If not, they need to cancel that award. They need to cancel all the stupid awards that they came out with all the players. He deserves the Jerry West Clutch Award. He's shooting 58% in the clutch this year. The next guy's 46%. Anyway, no, but I think it would be a better series just because they're going to throw people at Luka. Nobody can stop him on that team, I'll be honest. But nobody in the league can really stop him other than maybe Giannis, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, Sacramento, I'm with you. I would go Luka. I would go the Mavs. See, I'm already calling them the Luka Mavericks or whatever, like the Dallas Mavericks, right? Dallas is fourth, so we can't say them. This is where it gets fun. New Orleans.
I'm still riding with the Mavericks over New Orleans. New Orleans is a really fun team. They have a lot of depth, but they haven't done anything to prove to me that they're going to be a really good playoff team. Obviously, they played the Suns really well last year, but without Zion. But, Luka Doncic has proven to be and obviously it's a small sample size for Luka too. He's only 23 years old, but so far from what we've seen from Luka, he's proven to be one of the best playoff performers we've ever seen grace a basketball court. And the Pelicans really haven't proven much to me. We haven't seen Zion in a playoff scenario. I assume he'd be great, but we don't know. I'm curious. Iffy with the Pelicans just because we haven't seen Zion and Brandon Ingram together much this season. We didn't see them at all together last season. So how are they going to gel together whenever Brandon Ingram gets healthy? And it seems like by the time Brandon Ingram gets healthy, Zion's still going to be missing time now because of his injury. So I just don't think they have the time played together as a team to beat the Mavericks as of right now.
Only because I love Herb Jones and I think he can be a Luka disruptor, I'm going to call him, not stopper. No, I think they're defensively, I think they're built to beat the Mavs. I think they will probably play each other in a playoff series. And right now in a 7-game really close series, I would probably take the Pelicans just because if Dallas is playing well like they are right now, then obviously we know what they can do. They can beat just about anybody. And by the way, I have no idea who they've beaten this last 7 games. I know they played the Rockets twice, I will say.
I was going to say it's kind of the same thing as the Nets. So
it was pretty similar, I figured.
Yeah.
So funny conversation. It was like, hey, well, we're going to talk about 2 teams that are on win streaks, but why? And that's why we're here, right? The last 2, Memphis. This one's the hard one. This is like the one I would struggle the most with for sure.
Yeah, all right.
And I've thought about this week. That's why I brought this game up.
Yeah, give me a second.
Is Denver an easier answer for you? Is that like a thing to think about right now? Would you take Denver?
I think the Mavericks beat Denver.
Okay. Then think about the Grizzlies because I want to talk about Denver.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Give me the Mavs, but like ever so slightly, like they win in Game 7 on a Luka buzzer beater.
Yeah, that's how close the Pelican series was for me. So I think only because of what Jaren Jackson Jr. is doing currently in 24 and a half minutes or something stupid. He has like a 12% block rate, which is like if he continues that pace, he'll literally break the NBA record by like 4 or 5 points. It's nuts. I think just because of that team is showing, and they're just now getting. I think it's important to note time wise, they're 24 and 13. Second, well, they're tied with Denver, so I guess they're completely tied. So it looks like they've hit head to head too. So they're completely tied for first in the West with Denver. 24 and 13, and we just saw the Dillon Brooks, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams. I want to make sure I got those 5 right. We just saw that lineup for the first time in almost 2 years. Yeah,
no, they've been incredible, man.
I would say just because of the defensive versatility that Memphis has, especially off the bench, I think they're better, they're younger, they're deeper. I would go Memphis. I think it is close, though. I'm with you. I think Luka could – I mean, I just have to – in a playoff series, which he's done many times, I have to not sit here and be like, I mean, technically any game he could have 60. They could still lose a game he has 60. Don't get me wrong. Any team could lose a game that somebody scores 60. But I think Memphis, I'm starting to buy in. I'm buying in low right now, even though there's, like we said, second or first in the West. Like, I'm still buying in low because we haven't seen it the rest of this year yet.
Yeah, so the same way for a lot of these where you said in terms of the Mavericks, you're not really worried about who's going to stop Luka. It's stopping the other guys. Yep. I kind of feel the same way with Memphis in a way with Ja Morant. I feel like if a team could, and obviously it's easier said than done. I don't know who's stopping Ja Morant, but if a team could neutralize the other guys around Ja, which really in terms of self-shot creation is only Desmond Bane, if you can neutralize the other guys, I think Memphis could be they could struggle in a playoff scenario if no one else is contributing other than Ja. And Desmond Bane, as great as he was in the beginning of the season, it was a 2-week sample size. He's been cool since he returned from injury. I think it's like 3 or 4 games he's played, but obviously he's still getting his legs back under him. But is a 25 point per game Desmond Bane sustainable? I lean no right now. If Desmond Bane's going to be a 25 point per game score, then they could beat anyone and they could win the West. So,
and he's a really good defender too. It's really fun. You kind of said something that I don't think maybe you didn't even realize you said, and I think this is actually really good, and it may end up on a rabbit hole. But I think the point about a guy going crazy scoring 50, I think 60. I love how we're just saying 60 and throwing the number around like it's normal now. It's not. Let me be transparent. It's 50 is kind of normal because Luka's done it 5 times, Embiid's done it, Garland's done it. I think there's like 12, 15 guys that have done it this year. But the point you made about, like, can you neutralize? I don't know how people can stop John Morant. I think the more I think about it, it's kind of cool because there really is no Luka stopper that we've seen yet. Like, you thought Kawhi would do that. You thought PG would do that. Obviously, we've never seen him play Giannis in a playoff series, so that's hard to gauge. But right now, as it stands, there is no one that can stop Luka Doncic. That's just an assumption we have to make. John Morant's interesting, though, because what he does right now, the playmaking he's had, he had 17 assists the other night, career high. So he's showing where, and I guess I'm trying to get to a point here, but there are ways you can stop John Morant, but I think he's taken a step this year where he's had to be forced to be a playmaker again because his team's healthy. I mean, when they weren't healthy, he had to score everything, and obviously they went 20-2 or whatever it was when he was out last year, but I think we're seeing John Morant be a guy that can still be completely impactful on the floor, which is one of the biggest things I look at when it comes to draft stuff. Not saying he wasn't a top 2 or 3 pick, but that is really important when he was drafted, is like, if John Morant's not scoring 25 for me, what is he doing for me? And right now we're seeing unbelievable playmaking. The defense is always going to be something I go back and forth on with him. But regardless, we're seeing a guy that can be impactful outside of what he's doing on with the ball in his hands at the rim, etc. Does that make sense? Did that come out right?
Sure. Yeah,
I was making sure that came out right because I think Luka. I think it was more of your point of Luka is what he's going to be. Like, we're just going to get 30, 15, and 10, and we're just going to have to be okay with that every single game.
Right.
It is what it is. Anything else on Memphis before we do Denver? Because Denver's fun, and I have 2 things I want to get to for sure.
Oh, no, that's really it for Memphis. Shout out to them, though.
They have, 24 and 30. Honestly, I keep forgetting that they're just winning games. I just sometimes miss it. I don't care to watch them on League Pass all the time because they have more.
Yeah, I was about to say I haven't nearly watched as much of them as I should.
Well, and my thing, they're just getting healthy, so I'm going to watch them more now. But they're also a team that has more ESPN games the second half of the year and stuff, so it's just easier to watch them for the general public. I think the general public will start to buy in a little bit more soon. Now, my prima donna team, the team I picked to win the West, so that's why I want to have this conversation. You mentioned it already, that's why I had time to think about it and understand the thought process, but right now I would take Denver in a playoff series against literally anyone except for maybe Milwaukee. Boston, I don't know. I just don't know down the stretch what they're going to do. Whatever, there's a lot more points there. But I right now would take Denver against just about anybody. Jokic, I actually hope you used my 3-time MVP tweet. If you didn't, it's not a big deal.
I did.
Okay, I was going to ask earlier. This is a good time
there.
to do it. Slide it in. Like, hey, by the way. And by the way, just a bunch of people started replying like, hey, like, I can't believe. Like, I just think it needs to be said now so that when it's being said in a couple months, that I don't want to be the guy right or first about it. I want to be the guy that was like, here's why for the whole season when nobody, other than the voters were watching in November, right? Like, this is the most, you see the purple beam, right? Like, this is the most Kings basketball I've ever watched, the most Nuggets basketball I've ever watched. So I feel like I'm warranted in all of these conversations, at least for for Jokic. But yes, I would take Denver, and I want to hear your reasoning why or why not.
So I lean Dallas, and again, it's ever so slightly. Like, I'm not saying there's not a world where Denver can't win the series, obviously. I just lean Dallas. I think and obviously for honestly every team in the West, probably aside from the Warriors, maybe, there's a clear blueprint and a clear blueprint in how to beat them and how to exploit their weaknesses. And I think for Denver, it's the perimeter defense. And yes, they've improved in that regard. Getting a guy like Bruce Brown, getting KCP in there, Christian Braun, who I absolutely love Christian Braun. I think he should be getting more minutes for them, but that's a conversation for another day. But I think when you have Jokic, MPJ, and Jamal Murray on the floor, there's a matchup who can be exploited. So, and I think the Mavericks have guys who can exploit those matchups. Obviously, Luka Doncic is the best in the world, arguably, when he gets a switch on him due to the pick and roll. Spencer Dinwiddie, Jokic isn't a bad defender by any stretch of the means. I want to throw that out there. I don't think Jokic is a bad defender. I think he's very good in terms of positionally being a defender and being in the right spot. But if you're asking Jokic to guard a guard in a switch, then he's going to get cooked majority of the time. Like, that's just how it is. He can't keep up. And, that doesn't take away from how great he is. I still think he's phenomenal. You'll see in my video when you watch it, I agreed with you. I think he's the MVP right now. But I think there's a way to beat them. And I think in a 7-game series, like I said, Luka Doncic is, if you give him 7 games to figure you out and what you're doing defensively, he will figure it out and he will beat you. And I think the Mavericks' strengths play into Denver's weaknesses a little bit. And you could say, I'm sure you're going to come on and say the reverse, because who the hell on Dallas is guarding Nikola Jokic? Christian would have a very rough time guarding Nikola Jokic. So it could go either way, but curious to see what you have to say about Denver.
So teams recently, especially the Kings did this when they played them back-to-back. Love when teams get to play each other back-to-back non-division games. Have you noticed that, like, any difference in there? Like, I thought it was really cool when they made the decision, and then I was like, well, let me see how it plays out, where a team will play a team back-to-back like this, sometimes even back-to-back nights. Sometimes there's a gap. So Sacramento, obviously, that was the kind of the game that kickstarted the MVP conversation recently for Jokic on any level. But Sacramento said, you know what? Game 1, he's not scoring. That's not happening. Like, that is going to be the thing that we do. He scores 20. He has like 14 assists, and he has 12.5 rebounds, or 12, 13 rebounds. I said 12.5, like I'm thinking about betting right now. Whatever. 12 rebounds. And so he impacts, obviously, on every level of offense. That's not what I'm here to talk about, right? And then the next game, they're like, you know what? Let's change up our defensive strategy, throw something else at him, see what happens, right? And they just let him do what he needs to do and try to stop everyone else around them, and the Kings lost by 12. So when there is a strategy to, I think the Kings won the first, or the Nuggets won the first game by 3. So there is a strategy there where if you want to stop Jokic, and you made the point, you said that you think Dallas has the personnel to be able to do that personally. I don't think, and it's less about do I think Dallas can't do it, which I don't, but I think it's right now the way, and this might be early season syndrome. You can call it that if you want. But I think right now, if the playoffs started, I don't think any team's in a position, and obviously the playoffs aren't going to start today, but I don't think any team's right now in a position to stop Denver because of the versatility Aaron Gordon is giving them, where literally if Aaron Gordon's off the floor, who, by the way, is having sneaky all-star because of how crap the forwards are in the West after you get the first 3. We'll talk about that in a second. But just sneaky, good there for Aaron Gordon, obviously best season of his career outside of Orlando. And then you take him off the floor, and you're getting basically the same player, minus a little bit worse shooting, and Bruce Brown, like you mentioned. Like, so you're getting defensive switchability, you're getting versatility on both sides of the ball. Athleticism, plays off cuts, what Jokic can do. Like, those 45 cuts are unbelievable. He can find anybody in any spot. I think outside, obviously, it would be an offensive battle. It would be Luka versus, I don't think at that point, I think the team that wins will average 130 at that point. I guess would be my point. But I just think that, and I preached it all year, preached it all offseason, that Denver's depth is too good right now, and we're seeing it. Like, and I made that prediction before it happened because I believed in KCP, right? I believe in Bruce Brown. I believe in Aaron Gordon. Michael Porter Jr., I'm with you. I think there's defensive stuff that's frustrating that teams are starting to pick on him. But honestly, they're good enough defensively right now. They're top 8 in most defensive metrics. I'm fine with that. I think that's playoff winnable. I think they'll figure it out. I don't think Mike Malone's the perfect coach for them either. I'm not saying you need to fire Mike Malone. I don't think he's a championship level tier guy, whatever, but he can win a championship because I think he's capable and knows how to coach defense. But I think figuring out Porter Jr.'s minutes are going to be really, really important. I'm with you there. I think that's going to be a difference maker. But I think if we're just going talent, Denver's better. And I think if they can find a way to exploit Porter Jr., I just think the rest of those guys can contribute well enough.
I think also a point that we didn't mention is the point guard play. And obviously, for the most part, Jokic is the initiator, essentially playing point guard, if you want to call it that. But Jamal Murray's been very hit or miss this season. He's had his games where he's looked incredible, some very clutch moments, might I add. But he hasn't been himself. And then Bones Highland has been very up and down. So it's really, if we're going off right now, I think that's a weakness for the Nuggets, the point guard play. Obviously, you're getting great outside shooting from essentially everyone on the team, and Jokic is going to make everyone's job easier, but I think the inconsistency from those guys could be a problem come playoff time. And Jamal Murray, if he gets into form where he left off before the injury, I agree with you. I don't think anyone will beat the Nuggets. It's just a matter of if he gets there. And I personally have to see that first before I say no one could beat them. But I definitely agree with a lot of your points. I think they have great personnel. The defense is definitely better than people say, but I think that's a testament to regular season basketball. And I think in the playoffs things change, and like I mentioned earlier, there's liabilities. Porter Jr. is a liability. Jamal Murray, in my opinion, is a liability. If Bones Highland's out there, he's a liability. And as much as everyone loves him, should be the back-to-back-to-back MVP, Jokic, if he ends up getting switched on to a guard, is a liability. And a game that specifically stood out to me was, I don't know, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, something like that. The game that Anthony Davis got hurt when they played the Lakers was a very back and forth game. And then there was a stretch in the third quarter where the Lakers pretty much said, whoever Jokic is guarding, we're going at them. And then the Lakers went up by 10. And the Lakers aren't the best team, but they figured out a way to exploit them, and they exploited them. So I definitely agree though. They're a great team, and it could go either way.
Yeah, Darvin Ham, that's a good testament to Darvin Ham for figuring stuff like that out. He's a great coach. One thing with Murray that I found doing some research either for this pod or something recently, but and then we'll close with this so we can hit the rapid fire 5 minutes on the last two things. They have the thing on, and I don't think Basketball Reference is where this originated. They've only been doing this like play-by-play data is what they call it for positional estimates on how they're impactful. But Murray, I tried to put those two together probably. Murray has been 78% most effective at positional settings at point guard, which obviously we know that doesn't really matter because Jokic is on the floor. He's only been 21% effective at shooting guard. So I'm with you. I think, and that all that does is just show you that he's been effective with the balls in his hands, which isn't often. We know that. And the other point is they show how many games played. Obviously, he's played 30 this year out of, I think it's 32 or 33. 48 last year because of the injury, right? 48, 2 years ago, whatever it gaps the season if you don't play. And then 59 the year before. So he hasn't played 75 games since his 2018-19 third-year season. So I'm with you. I think you get to March, April when Jamal Murray's playing Jamal Murray again, like level, then this is going to be a completely different conversation because I think Denver, which I do, by the way, think it happens. I think they get to that point and they continue to do everything that they're doing right now. That's homework for the day. I haven't given homework in a long time on the show. Homework, stay up late or buy League Pass and watch the Nuggets games on replay.
Definitely watch the Nuggets.
Not you, but the homework.
Definitely watch the Nuggets.
You definitely, I can tell you watch them. I can tell you do watch them though. All right, let's rapid fire. We've been about 50 minutes or so here. Not that is, I want to try to keep you to the time I want to keep you on. But anything else about the Mavericks before we roll?
That's really it. Yeah, that's it.
All right, I think we got everything out. We feel good about them. Ultimately, by the way, the whole point I brought up the game, I wanted to end with this. The whole point I brought the game up is currently as it's constructed, and obviously we're only 30, 40-ish games in the season, getting close to half. But as of right now, you would have them as I think this playoff series matchup-wise, I think they would be the second or third best team for you. So I think that, and that's about where they are. They're third or fourth. So I wanted to play the game to see if they would fall a little lower, and ultimately they ended up where they should be. I'm a little lower on them than you are, but that's what I knew. I knew that coming into this, that I'm lower on them than most people, period. So.
Yeah, my thing with them, real quick before we transition, is just, like I said, and like I'm sure everyone knows, I really firmly believe that Luka Doncic is that good that no matter where they finish in seeding, no matter where people rank them in terms of how good they are in the Western Conference, Luka Doncic is that good that for a playoff run, he could do some magical stuff, average near a 40-point triple-double for playoffs, and that'll be enough to take them to the finals. So,
yep, I don't disagree with that. So, my thing I have for you, I have two more things, and one of them I told you about for the listeners for context. One of them I told, and we're going to save that for the end. I told you about 30 minutes before recording for a validated reason. I'll tell you why in a minute. The first thing I want to hit really quick for just having it on record because we're less than, I think what's today's date? The 5th. We're a little over 30 days from the trade deadline. What is one realistic trade for a team who either needs it or you think is just worthy of making that trade because it makes sense, or just prediction in general that you want to be on record about? trade
All right.
deadline wise.
Give me 1 second to think.
Yeah, no, this is why I did this. I did this where I can do all the editing and post production if there's a long gap to thought, and we can talk through it because I have one for you and we can discuss it. Or there's got to be something where you've watched and you went,
I like
this team would succeed.
I
with this
like
guy.
the Hawks. I like the Hawks.
All right.
I'm a Trae Young enthusiast. I think on their end, it's John Collins. He's been in the rumors for 3 years now. It seems like. Shout out to John Collins, though, because over the last 5 games, he's been playing a lot better.
He has been unbelievable. Yep.
But the Hawks have been struggling. They got a great team win last night, but overall, they've been struggling, and I think they need to make a move. Who do they trade John Collins for is a good question.
That's where I was like, okay, where do we? Because they got to get something that's going to help them make a playoff push in return. I'll give you one if you would like. I thought about this.
Sure.
Kyle Kuzma.
I think
Kyle fit them currently better.
No.
Okay.
I think that would be a pretty lateral move. Shout out to Kuzma, obviously. He's been good, but I think that'd be pretty lateral. One of my podcast hosts you up. We did a trade thing like a month or two ago.
That's part of the reason I did
it. What did he have? I think it was with the Jazz. I don't know what picks ended up being involved, but essentially the players moved were John Collins to the Jazz for Kelly Olynyk and Jordan Clarkson. And I think that's a very interesting trade for the Hawks. I think the Hawks should do everything they can to get AJ Griffin into the starting lineup. And I think a move like that allows them to. And, there will be questions about rebounding and guarding fours if they do this, but the starting lineup, in my opinion, would then be Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, AJ Griffin, Hunter at the 4, and then Clint Capella at the 5. And then you have a bench unit with Aaron Holiday. You have Bogdan Still. Now you have Jordan Clarkson in there, too, to just come in and get buckets. You have Kelly Olynyk, who you could play alongside Capella. You could play alongside Okongwu, or you could play Olynyk at the 5, and it just gives them a look that they didn't have before. I think Olynyk's a much better shooter than John Collins, and I think that's what they were lacking, a 4 who could really stretch the floor consistently. And then, like I said, Jordan Clarkson comes in there, and that's just another guy who could come in and get them buckets. So I think that'd be an interesting trade.
I like it. I don't have one outside of, and I'll give it to you, and then we can talk about it quickly and keep rolling. But I think I tweeted it. Somebody had asked about some trade stuff, and I was like, you know what? This is one that's important. I think the Nuggets are a Jakob Poeltl team because their trade exception is literally almost down to the 10,000 equivalent. Yeah. So, like, the trade exception covers the money for them. They have a couple of picks. They're not great picks, but they're picks. And then I think they could probably move off of somebody down the – I'm not a Zeke Naji guy by any stretch. He's been good for Denver, but I think that would be worth getting Jakob Poeltl, who would be an exceptional – we mentioned the Dallas Maverick thing a minute ago. It would be a rim presence that they just don't have. DeAndre Jordan's not playing, obviously, and Jokic is, like you said, positionally a good defender. But I think Jakob Poeltl is the perfect team with Denver.
Think if they get Jakob Poeltl, they'd be able to play Jakob alongside Jokic for stretches?
Absolutely, and I think because Poeltl can stretch it at least to 15-ish feet,
right.
As well as also I think he's a really underrated passer. Not that you need him to do that, but I think he would.
He is a very good passer.
The ball would keep moving. The ball would not sit, and I think it's also really important to think that if that's entirely just for your rim protection, then I think you win because you're literally not giving up anything other than a pick that you wouldn't value anyway.
Yeah, because on our podcast 2 weeks ago, we did one fatal flaw for every team. And what I said for the Nuggets was, and I don't know how many, there's only one guy who comes to mind real quick off the bat, but my thing for the Nuggets was someone who could protect the rim, but also play alongside Jokic. And the ideal guy is Jared Vanderbilt. That's the perfect guy. And ironically enough, he was a Denver Nugget at one point, I'm pretty sure.
He was, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
and I just don't see that Utah values him probably too much.
Yeah, no, I don't think they do that trade, but that's just a guy in that mode. I don't really know how many guys there are who could protect the rim, but also be a stretch 4. Not really many, but
no, and that's why I think Poeltl was important because he can be defensive. He is built to be a rim protector, and San Antonio wants a first, and they want to lose. I mean, they haven't showed that sometimes, but they do want to lose, I think, San Antonio.
Yeah,
so
no, that definitely helped. Anything other than DeAndre Jordan at the backup center would be an improvement.
All right, one last piece on the trade deadline that is important. I mentioned the Kyle Kuzma thing. I'm going to hold it up for the YouTube audience. Shout out to NBA Swap app. You can't see it probably. It's not going to focus because of the color.
Yeah.
But John Collins, Kyle Kuzma, that is red, which in the NBA Swap app is very clear, not good. The Washington Wizards are hard capped, and they are going to be taking on $20 million more than they should be. So that deal is complicated, although I do think Kyle Kuzma gets moved, which was the point I was making. So
Yeah, I could definitely see Kuzma getting moved. I think the Suns are in play for Kuzma. I think the Bucks should be in play for Kuzma. And a sleeper team that I don't know how realistic it is. I think the Timberwolves could be in play for a Kyle Kuzma. I think the Timberwolves would benefit from a Kyle Kuzma. Obviously, Kyle Anderson's cool. I love Kyle Anderson. My friends all call me Kyle Anderson because I play basketball in slow motion. So we're kind of the same guy. But I think Kyle Kuzma could do what Kyle Anderson does for the Timberwolves, but even better. So yeah. I don't know what the trade would look like, but
I don't either, and I would love to go through it more, but I want to make sure we get to the last piece here. But I will say I like it, and I think I'm going to stew on it, and I'll play around with the NBA Swap app tonight when I'm editing the show here, because I think that one's fun. Wow, Devin Vassell. I hate to do this live, but Devin Vassell's going to have knee surgery next week, so that sucks. But San Antonio wants him; they want to lose, so probably interesting timing. But anyway, no, I like the piece about Minnesota because new owner syndrome should not. I call it new owner syndrome, where a new owner and a new GM comes in and tries to make moves that are rash and harsh, and their guys, et cetera, et cetera. That's how they got Rudy Gobert. But I think if they want to try to make a push to not seem like the poster child of a bad trade, I do think that would be a good move because Kyle Kuzma is a winning player right now. So I think I like that one. I think I'm going to play with it more. I'll DM you a screenshot of what that trade would look like. At least, contractually. I don't know how much. Yeah. I don't know how much fairness at that point. I had to play around with the value of what people are worth. So, all right, really quick, let's hit at the end. There's really not there's debate here, but I think it's just we're still far enough away from it. I just wanted to see who your all-star starters was. That's the last piece for the listeners and the viewers. Wanted to just touch base, 5 minutes or less, hit these really quick because I think for the most part there is some debate at some of these positions, especially in the more loaded sections like the West guards. But I do think that, based on play, I think we're going to agree on a lot of them. And also based on the last hour, I think we've chatted. So I'm going to make sure I put mine now. But go ahead with your West front court would be where I want to start.
Jokic is obviously a shoo-in.
Bingo. We're just gonna. How about this? I'll go with who I agree with, and we can whatever. Yeah. So I agree with you on Jokic.
LeBron's a shoo-in at this point.
Bingo.
I think that LeBron spot would have been Anthony Davis had Anthony Davis not got injured.
I think if they're both injured, I think Larry Markkinen would get it. That would be the point I would make. When I first did it, the day they came out, I did Larry, kind of for TikTok's sake, but also for stop just being honest. But also because I think at the time he did deserve it. So good. Keep going.
And then the other one has to be Zion, I think.
Bingo. That's why I wanted to start with that because I'm with you. Jokic, Zion, LeBron is who I had as well.
Yeah.
And West guards.
Yeah, in terms of the guards, I think it's pretty obvious here too. I think it has to be Luka and Steph. I know Steph has missed time, but they're saying he could be back next week, so I think that gives him enough time before the votes go final to get some games played in and earn the spot. Obviously, there's a case for Shea, there's a case for Ja, but it's Steph Curry, 4-time champ we're talking about, who is off to arguably the hottest start to a season he's had in his career. So,
yeah, I'm honestly kind of surprised because Luka playing most of the games and having the season he's having that and I pulled it up just to be right on making sure I had the correct order. You mentioned Steph's really high on the guards. He's number one in guards in the West in fan voting, 2.7 million. Luka's 4 million behind, or 400,000 behind him, 2.3 million. So yeah, I would disagree on Steph. I have Luka. I think that one's dead obvious, and I think pre-injury I would have had Devin Booker, because I'm a Devin Booker truther, but I can't back this out now. I have been pounding this SGA narrative. You might have seen videos. You might have seen tweets or whatever. I want to be the guy to be like, this is it right here. This is the SGA year. And, 30.9 points per game, 5.7 assists, 5 rebounds.
Sure. And
just, willing his team to win. Yes, they won by 33 in Boston, or at home against Boston, most points in franchise history. I don't want to hear it, but he's an impactful winning player for them. They are doing way better than they should be. They're not top in the West or anything like that. That's crazy, but I think that less matters with All-Star than other awards, but I think he's deserving of it. He's number 1 in drives in the NBA for the second year in a row. He's number 6 right now. I think it was what it was as of 3 days ago when I looked. He's number 6 in points at the rim, and he's a guard. Like the next guard on the list is like
crazy.
34th. Like he's doing things as a guard that we haven't seen, at least from an efficiency standpoint, in a long time. So I'm going to give, for the sake of what I've been pushing, I'm giving SGA the nod. But Curry does deserve it. Also, SGA has been playing. Curry has not. And I think that's kind of the, if we're really close there, that's the teetering tier we end up with. I haven't put my votes in today yet, so I'm just going to keep doing these as we go because I was going to do this anyway. But let's go to the East. I think the East guards we need to save for last because that's the hardest one, I think. So let's do front court in the East. Go with your first one.
So I think KD is a lock.
Okay.
I think Tatum, as of right now, has to be a lock.
I'm with you.
The way he started the season and just where the Celtics sit in the standings. They're the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. So I think Tatum has to be a lock. And then this is where it gets tough.
This is weird.
Yeah, I feel bad doing it, but I slightly give the edge to Giannis over Embiid.
Bingo. I'm with you.
Like
3 for 3.
So slightly.
Very slightly.
If Embiid got in, I would not be mad. I wouldn't
either, but I also think for the sake of the league's reputation, I don't think Giannis can't get in.
Yeah, right.
I think that would just be horrible. I think Tatum would be the guy that gets bummed out, unfortunately, just for the sake of narrative and legacy. And I know fan vote is a big part of it, but it's not everything. Embiid's averaging 33.5, but his inconsistencies have been so like he's had these great games. Don't get me wrong, he's led them well when Harden wasn't there, but there's also other guys contributing really, really well for that period too. So I think Giannis has been the best player on his team, the leader, everything you need him to be statistically, whatever. We can talk about Giannis all day. I'm with you. Giannis, Tatum, Durant, at least if we're talking about the 3, I think deserve it. But I think it's just so close. It's unbelievable. Like we're going to get flamed for not having him beat. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be because it's fair criticism. Pascal Siakam would be the only guy I think next tier. I think at that point the East, it drops off really hard. Like Embiid, Giannis, Tatum, Durant, those are the 4. Siakam's been unbelievable. He's been playing an all-star level for sure. He will get in. Randall, a little bit better lately. Porzingis, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Kuzma. It starts to really drop. Like
I was
Bogdanovich,
going to say, though.
Paolo's probably going to get in as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you talk about Siakam, I think Randall's, I hate to say it because all my friends are Knicks fans. We're from New York, and I'm a Bulls fan for whatever reason. So I have a little bit of a thing against the Knicks just because I have to hear about them all the time. But Julius Randle's been absolutely incredible. So I think when you talk about Pascal Siakam being in that next tier right below, I think Julius Randle is like right there with him. And it really doesn't matter because I think both of them get into the All-Star game probably. But Julius Randle's been incredible, man.
Yeah, the fact that look like Kelly Oubre is one of the I think he's on the 4th row of this, which isn't exactly advantageous for the East. So, all right, let's do the guards because then we can get out of here. We've been here a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to bring you back. We've got plenty to talk about. We'll definitely make sure you come back. So, East guards, go right ahead.
I think Donovan Mitchell was a lock.
I think he was a lock before 71. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And as of right now,
before you say it, hold on. I want to ask this: who are you between, for the context of the listeners? Because you have Trae Young, Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, and Kyrie Irving. 3. Okay, so who are the 3?
So I'm like I said before, I'm the biggest Trae Young fan there. Maybe not the biggest, but I'm a huge Trae Young guy. Ever since I saw his first game at Oklahoma, like I fell in love with this guy. He's not in consideration for this.
Perfect.
So
I'm just messing with you. Perfect. No, I'm with you. I go ahead. Yeah.
He's definitely been better as of late, but the other guys have just been better. So I'm between Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, and Tyrese Haliburton. Those are the 3 guys I'm between. I think today I lean Kyrie just because he's been really, really good lately. And also, I got to think of how it's going to go. Fan voting, I saw Kyrie was up there when they just dropped the
really
fan
high
voting.
up there.
Yeah, so I think as of right now, Kyrie gets in, but I wouldn't be mad if either of the other guys get in. I would probably rank them Kyrie, Haliburton, and then Jaylen Brown just because of the Celtics' struggles over the last month. I moved Jaylen Brown down a little bit, but I think it could go anywhere.
I think when they've been good, though, he's been a huge part this year, obviously taking that jump and making it a big 2 officially for them. I would give it to Jaylen Brown just because of if we're all-star, obviously, it's what you value as an all-star at that point, and obviously defense doesn't matter in an all-star game until recently. So I just think what he's done for Boston has been super, super impactful. Kyrie's been an all-star before. I'm always going to lean towards the pretty first time, second time, third time kind of picks. I think it's Jaylen Brown or Kyrie Irving. I'm with you there. I think Tyrese Halliburton deserves to get it, and I think he will, but not a starter, unfortunately. Darius Garland deserves credit. So does Tyrese Maxey. LaMelo hasn't played enough games. Unfortunately, he's up there on this list. But at that point, I think it's Jaylen Brown I would give it to, but I think it's just super close, and there's nothing wrong with that pick either. So
for sure.
All right. Thank you for your time, first of all. I want to make sure, just like at the beginning, you at the end have a chance to plug and make sure everybody knows where to find you, where to find your show, etc. So everything will also, before you say anything, will be linked right here below on any Spotify, Apple podcast platform, as well as YouTube. So go right ahead. Whatever you got to say.
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. This was super fun. I enjoyed this. Hopefully we could do it again sometime. We'll definitely make it a point to have you on our show at some point for sure. But I'm a part of the Ballgame Podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. So like you said, it'll be linked in the description. And I also have my own YouTube channel, Chris's Hoops Corner. Just once a week, I just pump out a video about whatever I feel like making a video about pretty much, and that's how it goes.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome back whenever we have plenty of NBA to talk about the rest of this year. You got plenty of stuff to do here. So looking forward to having you back, and that would be awesome trying to figure out how to have 5 guys in one room and 1 guy on a Zoom call. So, yeah, I'd love to come on, and obviously logistically.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Thank you again. Looking forward to next time. Thank you for listening. If you have not subscribed, liked, comment, everything below, please do so. Don't forget at TwoPointers on Twitter, as well as don't forget TwoPointers or link in the description for 10% off your Dubby Energy orders. This has been the TwoPointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. We'll see you later.